well. Let's take a look at some of the top stories. Protests are erupting across Israel as the Hostages and Missing Families Forum holds a day of demonstrations demanding the return of captives still held in Gaza. Images show major roads blocked with rallies set to continue in cities nationwide throughout the day. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Israel deeply regrets the tragic mishap after a strike on Nasser Hospital in Gaza killed 20 people, including 5 journalists. Among the dead were contributors for Reuters, the Associated Press, and Al Jazeera, with Netanyahu insisting Israel values the work of journalists and medical staff. Iranian officials will meet France, Britain, and Germany in Geneva today. On Tuesday, as the European powers press Tehran to restore nuclear inspections or face renewed UN sanctions. The E3 have warned they could trigger the snapback mechanism by October, when the 2015 nuclear deal formally expires. President Donald Trump hosted South Korean President Lee Jae-myung hours after a Truth Social post warning of a purge or revolution in Seoul. Lee has diffused the tension with flattery, even joking about a Trump Tower in North Korea. But the meeting produced few breakthroughs on trade or defense. U.S. envoy Thomas Barak says Lebanon will unveil a plan August 31st aimed at convicting Hezbollah to disarm. After talks with the Lebanese president in Beirut, Israel is expected to offer a counter-proposal, with Barak stressing the plan would not necessarily involve military action. Iran has immediately vowed reciprocal action as Australia expelled Iran's ambassador, giving him 7 days to leave after accusing Tehran of carrying out 2 anti-Semitic arson attacks in Sydney and Melbourne, marking its first diplomatic ejection since World War II. President Donald Trump has announced the immediate removal of Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook, accusing her of making false statements on mortgage agreements. The sacking announced on Truth Social marks the first time a president has ousted a Fed board member in the bank's 111-year history, as President Trump escalates pressure on the central bank over interest rates. Pakistan has evacuated at least 150,000 people from areas along 3 rivers after India warned it would release excess water from dam. Officials say the move could worsen flooding in Punjab province, the country's breadbasket, already battered by weeks of heavy rains. The United Nations on Tuesday demanded that Israel's investigations into alleged unlawful killings in Gaza, including the recent hospital strike that killed 20 people, must produce concrete results. At least 5 journalists were among those killed on Monday's Israeli airstrikes on the Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis, sparking international outrage. Let's listen into what Tamim Al-Kaitan, United Nations Rights Office spokesperson, has said.
The Israeli authorities have in the past announced investigations in such killings. It's of course the responsibility of Israel as the occupying power to investigate. But these investigations need to yield results. There needs to be justice. We haven't seen results or accountability measures yet. We have yet to see the results of these investigations. And we call for accountability and justice.
There are reports the hospital was hit twice in quick succession, raising questions about a possible double-tap strike targeting rescue workers. Meanwhile, Palestinians in Khan Yunis held prayers for relatives killed in recent Israeli strikes, with health officials reporting at least 16 deaths in the area overnight. Since the war erupted after Hamas's October 7, 2023 attack on Israel, more than 60,000 Palestinians have died in Israeli military operations, according to Gaza's health ministry. Let's listen into what a Palestinian resident has said.
ونايم في خيمته في القرارة. كلموني على 12 قالوا لي قصفوا خيمته يما، راحوا شهداء يما، راحوا يما عيلة كاملة هيك، كسروا قلبي يما وحرقوا قلبي يما. أخوه الشهيد في شهر 8 اللي فات، وهي في شهر 8 ودعت أخوه الثاني.
Now for this discussion, we go to Matti Zweig. He's a geopolitical expert, joins us live from Israel. Thank you, Matti, for joining us again. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Thank you. What implications does the UN's demand for concrete results from Israel's investigation have on the accountability in conflict zones?
Well, I think this conflict has been going on for a lot of time. And as I said in the past, this is the first war that is being broadcasted 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So Israel is trying always to avoid civilians' deaths, and sometimes it doesn't happen. Why? Because this is the kind of conflict that Hamas get us in. I mean, I never listened why is Hamas not to blame for using civilians to protect themselves. And this is unfortunately what happens when you are more and more and more in this kind of war. And then I will say for the time 200, why Hamas don't release the hostages, why don't dismantle themselves and finish this bloodshed, which is very bad also for Israel, not only for them. And it is something you are not listening, because Hamas, all the countries, US, all the European countries, even the Arab countries say they cannot stay in power, but they continue keeping in power and continue trying to take Israel to all these kinds of actions that they are very unfortunate, but they are part of the war. And they have to do also their part, and they have to dismantle themselves, they have to free the hostages, and all this is going to finish completely. Israel, of course, has to investigate. Israel always investigates. They do, I hope, clean investigations from all things, always when civilians are involved or when soldiers are involved or when soldiers, they unfortunately has passed that kill each other because miscalculations. They investigate everything. Is someone investigating Hamas? This is the big question here. Not only what your previous person here said, because they are only looking for one side solution, and the solution must be from both sides. I'm always saying that. Now everything is in the hands of Hamas from one side and a government in Israel that they say we don't trust them, we continue and continue pushing to free the hostages and to control the Gaza Strip in any way. Give the peoples the power to be in peace and everything will be okay.
Yes, Matti Zweig, thank you for sharing that. Please stay with us as we stay in this region now. Now we move on, but stay in the same country, Israel. In Israel, protesters blocked Tel Aviv's southern Ayalon highway and other intersections on Tuesday morning, urging the government to end the war in Gaza and secure the release of the remaining 50 hostages. One person was arrested with a smoke grenade. Demonstrators held signs saying, "We'll stop when everyone returns," and lit bonfires in the street. Hostage families criticized Prime Minister Netanyahu for dragging his feet on negotiations. Dozens also protested outside ministers' homes. Democratic MK Gilad Kariv stressed that protests have previously pushed for deals and promised to continue until all hostages return. This marks the second week of a national strike called by hostage families. Let's listen into what the brother of one of the hostages has said.
Just a week ago, Hamas gave a positive response to the deal that is on the table, the partial deal that can release 10 living hostages and 18 deceased hostages. This deal could have been signed a week ago, and we could have been right now in the midst of this partial deal, talking in the midst of the talks about the end of the war.
Now we go back to our discussion with Matti Zweig. He's a geopolitical expert, joins us live from Israel. Thank you, Matti, for staying with us. Do you think this internal pressure we are seeing on the screen, do you think this realistically can influence Israel's military or diplomatic strategy, particularly Netanyahu's government moving forward?
Well, we live this tragedy almost 2 years, and the pressure has been from the beginning. But from the beginning, they were trusting that the government is doing all the steps to free everybody. And the big dilemma, as we always say, is if to continue pushing and causing more and more deaths in order to make Hamas to free them, or to go to an agreement. When Hamas went to talk about agreements like 20 times they say no and no and no. And also Israel, there are some terms that they are not ready to accept, like going out completely from Gaza, because in this way, Hamas is going to stay in power and to rearm themselves and to, as they say themselves, we are going to do more and more 7th of October in the future. So if there is this lack of trust, you cannot really get to a solution. And the families are in the middle of this crossfire. And not only the families, but all the all the society of Israel. And also, I only live 25 kilometers from Tel Aviv to get to my job. I have 1 hour and a half to get there because all the roads are really full of people on all the crossroads. Some of them, they are blocking them. Some of them, they are not blocking them. But of course, steam off is not really helping to take them out, because the government say that we don't have a partner to talk about to free the hostages. And people don't know already who to trust. But the question is that the hostages are still inside, still getting rot in the tunnels, while the Hamas is keeping, the only card they have to continue try and keeping themselves alive. And this is the big tragedy.
Yes, Maddie. Yes, like you've mentioned that it is difficult to see who to talk to in this case. Is it Hamas they talk to? Is it Qatar they talk to? Is it Egypt they talk to? But do you think that this growing scale of domestic protest in Israel, you also mentioned lack of trust from public sentiment towards the government's handling. Do you think, is there any way that they can bring the hostages back alive, whoever is still alive?
Your question is wonderful because it's real, because about 65 to 70% in all surveys, they show that the society in Israel don't really trust the actual government. From the other side, we are a democracy and elections are in 2026. So people, they have democratic, despite all the tragedies that we are going through, they have democratic mentality and they want the government to decide about this. And then all the time the discussion of the society and the people that are in manifestations with the families of the hostages is how, what is the limit? What is the border? To block the roads, to burn a lot. I mean, they are desperate and they are not really doing any influence on the actual government. This is the truth. So from one side, the civilian resilience that we live in a democracy and we have to wait for the government decisions. And from the other side, the desperation that nothing is really happening from our side. And from Hamas side, we know that unfortunately, they are all the time behaving like someone that is getting orders from Iran or from someone we think is from Iran, and they are not really wanting to have a solution to this.
Yes, thank you very much, Mati Zuaik. That was interesting to hear from your perspective. Please stay with us as we stay in this region now. Lebanese President Joseph Aoun has met with visiting U.S. envoys Thomas Barak and Morgan Ortagus and U.S. Senators Lindsey Graham and Jan Shaheen. Lebanon has been waiting for Israel's response to a U.S. proposal That includes details on a timetable and mechanism to disarm Hezbollah, as well as Israel's withdrawal from areas it occupied during the recent conflict. Earlier, Hezbollah leader also released a statement refusing to give up weapons. The Lebanese government is working on mechanism to disarm the group within a year. Peacekeeping mission to also feature in the conversations with the UN Security Council discussing the future of the peacekeeping force in southern Lebanon. U.S. envoy Tom Barak said that the United States would approve the extension of United Nations peacekeepers' mandate in Lebanon for 1 more year. We go back to our discussion with Maddie Zweig. He's a geopolitical expert. Thank you, Maddie, for staying with us. Now, what are the geopolitical implications of the U.S.-backed proposal to disarm Hezbollah? Do you think this is realistic given the timeline?
We are in the Middle East. Everything is realistic and not realistic at the same time. Something that it looks is going to happen 100% today is going to vanish in 24 hours or 48 hours, and then go back again and again to the first point. It's a tough area. And I can tell you a lot of things here that they are really strange. First of all, only a couple of months ago, Benjamin Netanyahu with Trump and with the United Nations agreed that the forces of UNIFIL in South Lebanon are going to finish, and they are going to get out of the area because they have been not really fulfilling their job. Let's be delicate. Which was 1701, and you know they should dismantle the power of Hezbollah 19 years ago. They didn't do it, and then happened what happened in all these years. Now Israel from his side and also the government of Lebanon from their side are trying to get the maximum they can from the arsenal of Hezbollah. Sometimes they succeed, sometimes they don't succeed, sometimes they even cooperate between them to know where exactly are the weapons. But Hezbollah is under pressure and under a great pressure because from one side they still keeps a very big arsenal also in their hands, but also in the missiles that they don't really have launchers or a lot of launchers to use them, especially in the Beirut area, and they don't want to lose them. And they don't want to lose at all the power they have in the civil society inside Lebanon. Yes. So this is more a question of if Israel, with the Lebanon government, it was the pressure of Donald Trump, are going to really push them to go an extra mile and to ask Hezbollah to dismantle. It can lead to a civil war. They say they care about the Lebanese society. Let's see if they really care about the Lebanon society. Don't go again, like in 70s and 80s, to another civil war.
Yes, Maddie Zweig, thank you very much for sharing that and staying with us throughout our story and sharing your expertise as geopolitical expert. Thank you very much. Now we move on to Europe. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz and Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney held a joint press conference in Berlin. Merz has called on Russia to accept Ukraine's peace talks and warned of potential sanctions. He said Europe, the US, and Ukraine are discussing strong security guarantees. Merz also reiterated Germany will not recognize Palestine. Carney highlighted supply chain vulnerabilities and Canada's role in diversifying critical minerals for Europe, as well as submarine fleet renewal and cooperation with Germany and Norway. The leaders shared handshakes, military honors, and walked the balcony overlooking the parliament. Let's listen into what both leaders have said.
One of the big vulnerabilities that's been exposed by the Ukraine war, it was exposed by COVID, it's been exposed by the changing global trade dynamics, are vulnerabilities in supply chains, including in critical metals and minerals. Now, Germany has been amongst the leaders in beginning that diversification away from China, particularly China and Russia. Canada can play a role in accelerating that diversification for Germany and for Europe. And these issues are only going to become more important. There's likely to be a fourfold increase in the demand for critical metals and minerals over the course of the
Now for this discussion, we are joined by Ross Feingold. He's a political analyst, joins us live from Taipei. Thank you so much, Ross, for joining us. Good to see you. What impact could Germany's call have, or does it have any impact, and how credible are these threats, again, of potential sanctions on Russia?
The European countries, along with the United States and others, have imposed sanctions on Russia since the start of the war, when Russia invaded Ukraine in February 2022. Obviously, up to now, it has an effect on Russia's economy, but it doesn't affect Russia's ability to wage war. So notwithstanding sanctions from certain countries, a reduction in their purchases of Russian energy, other countries have picked up the slack there, with India and China buying such large amounts of Russian energy and providing Russia with the cash that it desperately needs to continue the war. So to put it succinctly, this threat of additional sanctions is not going to scare Putin or change his plans for the war. What Putin really wants to see, and what really might change his thinking and his willingness to enter into some kind of ceasefire arrangement, is what is the United States and specifically President Trump willing to do?
Thank you, Ross, for sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now we stay in Europe. Germany is set to resume accepting vulnerable Afghan nationals after months of delays. The move follows mounting legal pressure and a push from Pakistani authorities to expel Afghan refugees. Around 2,000 Afghans approved for relocation under Germany's program had been stranded in Pakistan since Berlin froze the scheme. Rights groups and affected individuals challenged the halt in court, leading to recent rulings in their favor. The first Afghan families are expected to arrive soon, with the relocation happening via commercial flights. Germany has resumed processing cases, with staff deployed to Pakistan to finalize the details. We go back to our guest discussion with Ross Feingold. He's a political analyst, joins us live from Taipei. Thank you, Ross, for staying with us. Now, looking at this news, what factors do you think led Germany to initially freeze this relocation program? And now, could this move set a precedent for other European countries to follow suit?
Like countries in Europe, other countries in Europe, Germany has been faced with migration crisis over the past 10 years, starting from the time of the Syrian civil war. And they've struggled with how to handle this. At times the door has been more open, and at times the door has been more closed. And in recent years, the door has been more closed to migrants from the Middle East or Africa to enter into Europe. And there's a lot of domestic political pressure throughout Europe, not only in Germany, to maintain those kinds of closed-door policies. However, on the other hand, there is sympathy for assisting Afghans who help with the war effort, with the NATO countries, including the United States and other countries that had troops on the ground in Afghanistan for an extended period of time. They had Afghanistan staff, drivers, translators, Afghanistan soldiers and police work with the foreign military forces. So this is a very sympathetic group, and there's been a lot of criticism in the United States as well as in Europe about the slow speed to admit these people who have a genuine fear of persecution under the Taliban because of their past association with either the former Afghan government or with the foreign military forces operating in Afghanistan. So there's a lot of sympathy for these people, but governments, again, they're also under pressure to keep the door closed to migrants.
Thank you very much, Ross Feingold, for joining us. Always great hearing from you and your insights as a political analyst. Thank you very much. This is all we have time for. We will continue to bring you more news